This is a very, very special occasion for us, actually, because we're today talking about the education work that, if any of you were listening yesterday to the conversation, Dale Vince, who was interviewed, was talking about the importance of education, which none of us can really deny, in terms of how we're going to really tool up the next generation to be able to tackle and live with the issues around climate change. We have worked very hard over the last 12 months or so on a programme called the Ministry of Eco-Education, and today we're going to profile this with some very special people who have been centre to this from the beginning, at the get-go, really. So I'm going to invite onto the stage those people who've made the big difference for us in making this come to life. They represent Minchinhampton Primary School, and there is nothing better than listening to children firsthand talking about how their education is impacting them, their families, their communities. So I'm going to welcome to the stage, please come through. First of all, we have Robin, who won't be creeping along for very long. I know Robin is very, very keen to chat. We then have Elizabeth, and then we have, yes, please, big welcome, Jacob, Mr. Moss, headmaster of Minchinhampton Primary, and Paul Turner, who is leading our Ministry of Eco-Education work. So I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves. Thank you very much. So we get a good flavour of who is on our stage this morning. So start with you, Mr. Moss.
So I'm Nick Moss, the head teacher at Minchinhampton Academy, which is just above Stroud, in the hills above Stroud. Very happy to be here.
Thank you very much. We're loving having you here. And next?
I'm Robin. I'm 11. I'm from Minchinhampton School, and I really like frogs.
Yeah, we're going to tell you something very interesting about themselves.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I'm 11 from Minchinhampton School, and I like hedgehogs.
Hedgehogs. So we've got frogs and hedgehogs so far.
I'm Jacob. I'm 11, and I really like Lego, and I once walked into a lamppost. So,
very important when you're thinking about the environment is where you're walking and what you're looking at. And Paul.
Hello, my name's Paul. I'm the education lead for the Ministry of Eco-Education. I've been a secondary geography teacher, and then have, over the last few years, got more and more involved in climate change education and curriculum authoring, and have been leading this project for the last year.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Now, I think to start with, what we really want to do is just kind of understand a little bit more about what the Ministry of Eco-Education is. I will explain that it is an ecotricity initiative. It's actually funded through our foundation, our charity called the Green Britain Foundation. But over a year ago now, we asked Paul to lead this for us. So Paul, if you'd like to describe what Ministry of Eco-Education is actually about, that would be amazing.
I might just start by just saying that giving you a background of the landscape that we're in at the moment. So this banner in front of you shows how the world has got warmer, and you're starting over on the far side, 1850, and as you move through, each stripe is a year. And over on this side here is 2020, and you can see how the world has got warmer. It's got warmer by 1.2 degrees Celsius. So there's a whole series of kind of physical things happening to the world in terms of the climate and nature emergency. And alongside that, we've got a changing picture in terms of society, where more and more people are kind of appreciating the situation we're in, understanding that we need greater understanding and change as well. So we need to sort of shift to action. And so that's the sort of landscape of where this project fits, in the sense of saying, well, actually, in terms of schools, we need to enable and support teachers to better teach sustainability and to explore the climate nature emergency. So the Ministry of Eco-Education is a group of teachers who have brought together the best free resources. So what we've said is, actually, there's more than enough really good teaching materials out there. The challenge for teachers is to find it and then to work out how to fit it into their teaching. So we've got the resources of more than 160 different environmental organisations, WWF and kind of the Wildlife Trust, and all those sorts of names that you would know of. And what we've done is weave them together into series of lessons that are framed around really interesting and engaging questions, and it's the sort of questions that we think young people should be exploring in school. So there's some of them actually are on the board down here, and we've actually got one of them hidden on a bin around the site. It says, and on the bin it says, "Does anything ever go away?" And that's the sort of question that we explore with young people. Other questions are things like, should we all go vegan? And exploring the pros and cons of our diets and exploring plant-based diets more. We've got questions like, is carbon a magic ingredient? And it pulls together the science of the rock cycle and the carbon cycle and marries that with the history of the Industrial Revolution. So another kind of aspect of what we're trying to do as well is encourage teachers to be more cross-curricular. So instead of traditionally schools have taught English, math, science, and it's been very siloed. We also think that we need to be opening up to a more systems thinking approach and apply that also to the way that we structure knowledge in classes. So what we do is we've been working with 15 schools over the last year, and we've actually physically visited many of them. We've run assemblies, helped support teachers in terms of almost training, and then they've had access to all of these resources that they can then use and teach. And it's very much been a reciprocal relationship, so we've also been gaining feedback and sharing best practice of teachers, because there are some wonderful examples of teachers who are doing this, but what we are wanting to do is help support those teachers so that every teacher can be doing this, every school, and so that we can embed this within every lesson for every pupil. So that's very much our vision. Just to say where we're heading to next, we've got 100 schools, or just over 100 schools, who we're working with from next September, and these schools are right across the country. We're going to reiterate this at the end, but we're very much looking to engage with as many schools as possible. So that's something we're going to remind you of at the end. Yeah, I think that's probably it, Helen.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, lovely. I think we were on sort of 15 pilot schools for this year, which has been amazing, hasn't it? And we've been on some amazing trips to schools up north, which was fantastic to see. A big engagement, really, by teachers. But obviously it needs quite a lot of input and hand-holding as well. So Paul's been doing a lot of that. And I think probably, can I call you Mr. Moss or Nick? What context are we in here?
I put my shirt on specially.
Oh, so you're Mr. Moss today?
No, you can call me Nick.
Nick, could you just perhaps describe, before you guys are going to tell us what it's really like, that's the most important thing, isn't it? But just before we start that, would you just like to describe how Ministry of Eco-Education has impacted Minchingham Hampton Primary and what's been happening there?
Yeah, I mean, before I say anything about our journey into this, I think one key message I'd just like to pull out of what Paul was saying, and this is to any parents or teachers out there, is that it is very doable. This is not some bolt-on which the DfE is throwing us again, which makes the whole thing feel more and more unmanageable, the curriculum that is. This is doable. So that's my one key message to you, where we've been integral in this process of developing the curriculum, and we are delivering it, and it is doable. So I'm just going to say that as a key message to anyone out there who's interested in this. It's not a bolt-on. It's not going to tip you over the edge of your sanity. Yet another thing, community cohesion, British values, and now the environment. It's not going to tip you over the edge in terms of managing the curriculum. It is very doable. In terms of our journey, we have had a long association with Dale Vince. We're up the hill above Stroud. Dale's son came to our school, so we've had this long association. And at some point, we sat down and said, look, we need to try and put something together here. All schools were charged with redeveloping their curriculums. However many years ago that was now. And Ofsted, swift on the heels of that, come in and check what you're doing in terms of the curriculum. So, you know, it wasn't just an opportunity. We had to do something with our curriculum. And the general idea was you had to come up with something pertinent, something local, something relevant to your school. And this is one thread that we have laced through our curriculum. And what could be more relevant, more critical than teaching about the climate crisis. There's no doubt there is a climate crisis. We cannot get away from that fact. There's no denying it. So we've got to get on and build it into our curriculum. I think we all have a responsibility to do this. It's the biggest challenge of our times, and it's going to be the biggest challenge of our children's times more than ours. It's their future that's in jeopardy more than my future. So we've got a strong mandate, a real responsibility here to try and do something about that. So Dale said, yeah, that's fine. Let's talk. Go away and come up with a curriculum, Nick. And then COVID came along, and not an awful lot happened, it has to be said. And at some point, Paul has been engaged in this process and has galvanised us and pulled this together, worked very closely with our teachers, brought his expertise in, and it's taken us somewhere we were not anticipating. It's intimidating but exciting to be up here on this stage. It's not what I was predicting. I just wanted to get a curriculum sorted out for my school, but here we are. And yes, it's been an important and an amazing journey. So, yep.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry it's intimidating, but it's worth it, isn't it? It's worth being here, isn't it? And really, really showing massive leadership in terms of a school that has really embraced right the way through what the environment, the aspects of the environment and how we can tackle things. Now we're going to learn a little bit more from the people in the action areas who've been running different programs, different things throughout the year, and they're going to tell us a little bit about one of their very important projects that happened. I think there was a sustainable fashion show, wasn't there, at some point, and possibly there are some items that are on show here. I'm going to come perhaps to you, Robin, shall I?
Okay.
Robin, would you like to tell us a little bit about your sustainable fashion show, why it happened and what you did?
Well, we were doing a project about how sustainable our clothes are, like who makes our clothes, what materials they're made out of, and all of that. And we had a fashion show at the end of that project. The clothes used at the fashion show were made out of recycled garments, donated or broken items, and then there was a fashion show where we performed this to parents and siblings and carers, and spoke to them about the climate issues and things like that. And a person from the team would be speaking about how the clothes are recycled, whilst the other person would be modelling the clothes. And lots of our clothes actually looked really great, which I was not expecting.
Very important.
Considering they're children. But yeah.
And can you tell me, anyone here, what you learned? What was the most interesting facts, perhaps, that you learnt about your clothing and what makes a sustainable fashion show? What were the things that were important?
Well, whilst we were doing the fashion project, we made magazines about what was happening to all of our clothes and how they'd go to landfill. And one of the key facts we learnt was 7,000 litres of water would go into one pair of jeans.
That is a phenomenal amount of... Oh, that is big, isn't it? And what does that mean? What's that made you think differently? Has it made you think differently about your clothing, Jacob?
Well, yeah, and the Owl Sea was drained because of the clothes of literally just making jeans.
Yeah.
And
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. And has that made you think differently about your clothes and where you get your clothes from?
Well, yes, I think so. So I now, once I'm done with my clothes, I'll give them down to my brother, who would then give them down to sister,
Brilliant.
which would then eventually go to the charity shop when my sister goes out them. But,
That's incredible. And have you seen any sustainable fashion shows happen on the catwalks, the big catwalks? Did you do any studies there? Did you find anything? No?
I don't think so. I think they were given a remit by a couple of designers.
Oh, nice.
One who has a sportswear company up in York,
Yeah.
and it's completely sustainable
Lovely.
products, and also a fairly well-known designer known to us who, yes, gave them the remit in the first place.
Nice, yeah. I remember, I think you had was it ocean recovered plastics that were going into some of the clothing? You had a visit, didn't you? That I think I was there for that one, and then you learnt about the different fabrics. And did you think the fabric was any better, or did it compare well with what you would normally be using?
Well, I think that seeing the fabrics and how normal they seemed, I feel like if one person that wasn't a massive company or anything could do that, then I think massive companies could do that as well, and they just aren't being bothered because they think
that's too right.
Yeah, money.
Yeah, very, very good. So we need to drive that. And it's important for you because, if you're asking for those things from big companies, they will reply, won't they? Will respond to that. So very important, Jacob, yeah.
We actually sent letters, I think it was in year 3, to some of the Tesco and Sainsbury's, asking them to lower their plastic bags and change their plastic bags to paper bags or recyclable bags. And yeah, I think they did listen.
That's good.
Can I just give a bit of context to this? So what we try to do is work our way through. Every time we do a unit, every time we're dealing with anything to do with the environment, we're trying to work our way on a journey from really appreciating nature through to actually protesting and taking action, speaking their truth, doing something about it. So this fashion show that they put on, at the end of it, that the parents watched it, sipping their wine and enjoying their evening, but the idea was to shame them into walking outside and swapping some of their clothes they didn't want anymore for some other people's clothes who didn't want theirs anymore. So there were racks and racks of clothes outside. Parents were not allowed to leave the premises until they'd gone away, thought about what had been said to them, and actually did something about it. So, children, do you think that you actually impacted on how your parents thought about clothing after this fashion show?
Well, we gave talks out of each outfit so that they know how we made the outfit and why we made it. So I think that hopefully had an impact on what the parents thought, because as well as with the Swish event, we swapped the clothes that we wouldn't wear again, and then they swapped them too. So hopefully they had listened to the talks we had given and the impact we had done.
Amazing. And I think you're moving up through schools, aren't you? You're moving into a new school. Is that all 3 of you are doing that? And what are your hopes and dreams of your next school? Do you think they might take on some of the, the issues around climate change, particularly maybe fashion and the school uniform?
Well, one of me and my friends' hopes are we fundraised for a bird hide. So we fundraised £2,000.
Did you?
No, we fundraised about 600, but it cost 2,000, so we're still going so far. But the teachers have allowed us to come back and run the club. So that's our aim, to run a club, to get people to understand and appreciate the nature, and then that'll make them want to help. Because
that's amazing. That is amazing. That's well done. Well done. That's brilliant, isn't it? That's incredible. And what just thinking about other things, so sustainable fashion obviously was a very good way of learning. What other areas, topics have you covered while you've been learning about being more sustainable, being more caring more about the environment? Are there other topics that you've covered?
We measured I know 2 of them. So one of them we measured the rainforest now, and then we measured it through the ages. So I think it was 18,000 AD and then 18,000 BCE.
Oh, okay.
And so that was one of the things we did. And then we put them together and folded them up so that we could literally see how much rainforest had been lost over the ages.
Wow, did you?
And the other thing we did was I've forgotten now, I think.
Don't worry, I'll come back to you. Doesn't matter. Does anyone else remember anything they've been learning?
Well, with the rainforest loss stuff that he was talking about a second ago, we also measured our school grounds compared to the rainforest and saw the differences in rainfall, temperature, things like that.
Yeah. And there's been quite a significant shift, hasn't there? There has. Is there anything that kind of is worrying you about that, temperatures and so forth? What does that mean if the temperature goes up?
If the temperature goes up, what I think is going to happen is the ice packs will melt, and that will give nowhere for the polar bears and all the animals in the what's called the Arctic to live.
Yes.
So I think that'd be a big impact because nobody wants polar bears or seals to become extinct.
No.
And also because of the heat, the seas are rising, which is destroying some of the habitats of animals who live lower ground.
Yes. Yeah, it has a huge environmental impact, doesn't it? On people, their homes, and the environment it's very, very is critical now, isn't it? Do you feel hopeful? Do you think we can turn this around?
I think if we keep going, doing things like putting an eco-curriculum into more schools and having more protests and things like that, then one day I think we will be completely sustainable, but that day's quite far off.
Very good.
I quite like listening to Dale yesterday. He is a real note of hope and
Yes.
optimism. He can see this not just as something to feel desultory about and hopeless about, but actually as an opportunity,
Great.
an economic opportunity. And I think we see it as an educational opportunity. It's very, very good learning.
Yeah.
I think we have to go at it in this way, in a positive manner. We have to kind of build on what we can do, build on our strengths, and try and be hopeful. So, yes.
Yeah, nice.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the key to it, isn't it? I think we have to believe. If we believe we can sort of make that transition. Paul, do you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to say the fashion show and the bird hide are really good examples of kind of what we've tried to encourage is to have real-world positive actions as outcomes of the schemes of work and the learning, so that the students are working towards achieving something that has an impact beyond the classroom and also has a really positive, tangible one. And I think that's a really good place for young people to start their journey in having a really big positive impact on the world, is by just first of all focusing on your own school grounds or your own family or your local community, and then collectively you can build that ambition. But I think that's a really good way. A lot of people are very concerned around sort of eco-anxiety and depression linked to this the kind of very doom and gloom message. But I think what Nick is also saying as well is this idea of acknowledging that, starting with the sort of facts, but then moving beyond that and saying, okay, as a group of people, how can we have a positive collective impact on the world around us?
Yeah.
I think Paul put this to us fairly early on. He said, look, don't patronise your primary school children. Don't do something tokenistic, as in like a junior version of taking action. These children can actually make a difference. And I don't think there's any doubt that the parents left that sustainable fashion show thinking, okay, I do need to think about this. I am going to go and swap some clothes. I am going to be more responsible going forward. And the same impact would have been had on the children. So do not underestimate our children. We've learnt that lesson over the last 2 or 3 years. Their thinking in many ways is clearer and cleaner than our own. They are thoroughly capable of diverse thinking. They're not just vessels to fill up with facts and at a later date finally start thinking about something. They can do it here and now, and they can actually make a real difference right now, as Greta Thunberg has proven, and as these children proved with their sustainable fashion show. I think they need to be treated as young people, not as children. They don't need your patronage. It's their future, more so than yours. And I think we need to give them that airspace to speak their truth and make a difference.
Amazing. We actually visited schools up in, where we were in for Halifax, weren't we, in and around Liverpool. And we turned up for on one occasion at the end of a week where the children had been, all first the primary school children, hundreds of them, but they'd all been looking at, it was part of Big Green Week in September, and they'd focused quite a lot on waste, and they were talking a lot about litter, which actually is a very big problem, more so perhaps in some parts of the country than others. But at the end of that school day, the parents were invited to come and watch them perform, and they all went out onto their school playing field, and they lined up in their years, and they all had a performance of some description, like they read a poem, they sang a song, they did a dance. One group did a whole song about what if the world went vegan, and they performed to their parents, and it was just the most incredible moment where you could see the penny dropping. You know, these people, the parents had come to see before they were going to just collect their children to go home, but suddenly the children were telling them things that they probably should know already, and they were very animated in terms of what they were doing. And I'm sure you're very animated. You were very animated when I met you at the school, and it made such a difference. And when the children walked back into the school, the parents followed behind and were asked to go back to where they'd normally meet the children to take them home. No one said a word. They all had their heads dropped, and you could tell that something had happened. It was almost like the walk of shame, but in a way, it was just demonstrating how children can, and I agree, they're not children. You're young adults making a very big difference in the world already. You know, how much impact you can have. It was amazing. I'd just like to ask each of you, how's life changed at home because you've learned about the environment? Has anything happened at home in your community that you know, feel proud of as a result of your work that you've done?
Well, we've stopped using so much plastic, like just buying all the waste and all the plastic bags, and we reuse the plastic bags that we have bought.
Brilliant.
And since the fashion show, we haven't just been like throwing out our clothes, we've been like giving them to a charity shop or someone who can wear them again.
Amazing. That's brilliant, Elizabeth. Jacob, what's happened in your world?
So when I went to the beach and I was like enjoying the time, but then I saw a bit of plastic and I picked it up and put it in the bin. Now whenever I'd see, it was actually so these year 4 girls did an assembly, and that really changed me. So now like every time I see a piece of plastic, I will pick it up and put it in the nearest bin.
Well done. What happens if we don't pick up the plastic and put it in the bin?
It will eventually go to the sea where either turtles could mistake it for jellyfish, or it will just fish will eat it, and then
very sad, isn't it? Yeah, there's a lot of ingestion of plastic, isn't there, in the waterways. How about you, Robin? What have you done in your world?
Well, obviously, I donate clothes a lot, and also as well as that, I think a big difference is just how you think about things, because usually before all of this, I would probably just throw a piece of plastic in the bin and think nothing of it. But now whenever I throw a piece of plastic in the bin, I think, why couldn't that company have used a different type of wrapping? It would be much easier and better for the environment.
I love your thinking.
Can I just add on to what Robin's saying there? I think this change, these are small examples of change in thinking. The change that needs to happen, I think, for us is a change, complete radical change in the way we think, and it has to be a move towards a more responsible way of thinking. But also, if you like, it's about things being enough rather than wanting more. I think that's what we're trying to teach the children in school. That word "enough" is such a special word. I think we have enough. Some people don't, but a lot of us have more than enough. And all we can think about is wanting more and more and more. You have to look at the new DFE strategy for the environment, which is fine, but it's still talking about we want more of this and more of that. I just think we need to use that word "enough." And I think the children, we're constantly peddling this with the children in school and trying to get them to appreciate what they have and be grateful for it. Anyway, yeah.
was going to add as well is it's this idea that traditionally teaching around the climate and nature emergency or climate change, there's still a lot of schools who are worried about using language like crisis or emergency, and I think that's doing young people a disservice because we're not calling it what it is. We've done that for too long, and that's potentially part of the problem is because we've shielded people from the reality of this. But the way that schools have often traditionally addressed this is by saying climate change is a science issue or it's in geography, and they've siloed it and they've been really kind of confident to just say let's teach the facts and the science of this, and what we're actually saying is we need to move beyond that. It's not just enough to say okay, these are the mechanics of how the climate is changing and this is what we're doing. We actually need to say as a society there are big questions that we are already asking ourselves, just like Nick was mentioning there about how much stuff is enough. That's one of the questions that we've got that we engage young people with. But exploring those bigger, broader ideas, I think, is also something that we need to sort of to do justice to this. Is actually take or help young people explore those questions as well. And these are sort of questions that they will have with friends and family, and they'll see in the media. And it's really important that as teachers and educators that we help support them to explore those. And I guess then what that leads to is thinking about teaching in a slightly different sense as well, where, and I know Nick actually and your staff are really confident with this, that idea of there being lots of uncertainty, of actually not knowing where the journey will go. So you start with a plan, but actually the outcome of the lessons and actually the things that you explore are led more by the students as well, and by what they care about and what they think is important and the questions they have. And I think listening to young people and responding to them within the school is also another really important part of that journey.
I think, you just had to look at the impact on our children of the last 2 years of the pandemic. It's had a crushing effect on their mental health. And it's not really out there in the ether, it's not out there in the media very much. But right there at the coalface, I'm telling you as a head teacher, it's had a really dire effect on children's mental health. And that is for the simple fact that for 2 years they've had to process the stress of the pandemic and not really being given the means in their young minds to do so. Now, really, this climate crisis, it's the same problem for them. They've got something you can't hide it from them. It is there, even if you're not talking about it openly in front of them. It reaches them through osmosis. They get it, and they're having to deal with the stress of that. You've got to give them the means to process it. And that includes being straight with the facts and giving them the power, the self-efficacy to go out there and do something about it.
Very good. Really good insight. I'm going to open to questions in a second. I just wanted to just touch on the government's recent, it appears to have, the government has got more of an interest in how environmental sustainability is going to be translated through the curriculum. Things like the nature premium, the climate climate strategy, recent DEFRA programme as well for education. But could we just get a little bit of a flavour exactly what that is and whether it's really going to work and how it's to be adopted?
Yeah, so a few months ago, the Department for Education held an event at the Natural History Museum, and they launched this strategy. They'd sort of spent a year putting this together. It's a really good document in the sense that it exists. The government are acknowledging this, and there is a strategy. I think lots of people who already work in this space feel that the strategy needs to be bolder. There's two strands to what they've suggested. So the government have realised that school estates, if you put them together, all of the school sites, it makes up an area the size of Birmingham. And so they think, well, if we collectively try and renature, rewild, increase the biodiversity of these sites, that there's so much potential. And then also using those sites, harnessing them as places for people to collect data and information. So there's going to be a website where schools will be able to upload data about their school site, and then collectively there'll be a sort of investigation into schools and kind of making them better in terms of for nature and for the people as well as part of nature. The other strand is a Climate Leadership Award, and I think this comes in response to lots of the youth climate strikes and lots of the kind of young climate activists, and it's the government almost trying to appease them and say, look, actually there's a channel for you to put your energy. I mean, the outcomes of this are points and sort of certificates that can then be translated for university and for outside. And I'm sure it will be great. It's going to bring together lots of the projects that already exist for kind of young people to get involved. The John Muir Trust is a good example of that, and it'll feel, I think, a little bit like a Duke of Edinburgh's award, but it'll be a kind of climate version of that. So at the moment, those are the two strands. There's also then this natural history GCSE that's going to be starting in 2023. But the sense, it was actually labelled as the climate change GCSE, which was not really right. People got the wrong end of the stick. This natural history GCSE is going to be more the biology in terms of conservation and ornithology, and it really will be focused on that natural history. So I don't think there's a sense that that actually achieves maybe what people are hoping for. There's still a bit of a gap there in terms of this knowledge. The government's ambition around changing the curriculum doesn't exist at the moment. There is no ambition to change the curriculum. There's a sense that the curriculum is just right. We don't need to touch it. There's, at the moment, in terms of science and geography, there's a sense that we might be able to bring in more climate change education, but I think that will be very much around the science and less about the solutions and actions focus. I think what's also interesting is there's a backdrop at the moment as well of teachers feeling a little uncertain and potentially a little bit scared about what they are allowed to talk about in classrooms. The government have issued documents around political impartiality, which, if you do read them, essentially what they're saying is teachers can't advocate certain solutions. They can't, you wouldn't be able to go into a classroom and say, I'm going to go on a march, you should come with me. That would be deemed as not appropriate. But I think what it doesn't stop, though, is conversations about, and there's no reason why teachers can't explore any of these issues, and that's something I think teachers need to feel more confident about, is there's no excuse to ignore these things and to not use language like climate emergency, as long as you don't veer into that really kind of advocating and the bias in terms of solutions.
Brilliant. And it is about teachers, isn't it? It's about how we can provide more sort of CPD sort of development for them as well, I think. So new teachers coming in and old who've been in this for a while, they feel confident, isn't it? It's something that everyone's trying to grapple with, is the right way to communicate and the right way to learn. And actually just listening to the three of you is, already giving ideas, I'm sure, to people who are teachers as to how to do things. I'm going to open up to questions.
Thank you. Massive congratulations to all of you, the children, the head, and Ecotricity for setting up this. It's wonderful, really good. I look forward to looking at the website. I just would like to pick up on one thing, that we are still talking about the climate emergency in the future, but it's not the future, it's here and it's now. And I really think we need to change our language and be talking about the climate emergency present and future. The children are experiencing it at present as well, so I really think we should change the language around that. But my question is about school meals. So the schools I work with in Devon, they are very concerned, the children are always very concerned about how much waste there is from school dinners. And I'd just be interested to know from the children or the teachers, have you faced that issue at all? Do you have a plan to deal with it?
Well,
Thank you.
Mr. Moss chose house captains, and one of the jobs of house captains was like bin duty, where if the child hasn't eaten enough, you had to ask them if they wanted to eat any more, and we'd have to try and get the food waste down every week.
Yes, that sounds terribly mean, doesn't it? It is mortifying to look at the amount of food waste in a school food bin. I think I'm probably going to cut in here because we have got something very exciting happening in September. We have given notice to our big catering company who cover an awful lot of schools in this country. And we've taken on a local organisation called The Long Table. They have come up with something called the Giant Plate, which is going to be their catering option for us. They worked with us throughout the pandemic. We had a couple of freezers, and they created meals for the local community. You could pay what you wanted for those freezer meals, but it helped people through the pandemic. We still have that freezer, so part of the vision is that in their margins they produce enough food that some of it automatically goes into that freezer. And all the food is being locally sourced, and they're building vegetable patches for us in the school grounds, so we're going to be growing our own veg to go into those meals. So if you like, it's a sustainable, socially responsible approach to catering. Some of these big catering firms are huge. The profits at the top are massive, and the service down at the coalface is average. So we've given notice on that. I think it's time to move on, really.
Congratulations. Wow. Wow. So the three of you miss out on that. So what schools are you going to? Are you all going to the same school?
I'm going to Marling.
And we're both going to Stroud High.
To Stroud High. So Marling and Stroud High need to link up as well with the Long Table, don't they? Long Table is amazing. I'm sure many of you know it because it's close by. It's founded in Stroud by Tom Herbert and another really lovely guy. I can't remember his name, but he's very, very good as well. But I know they're thinking about replicating their model for other parts of the country as well. So something like this is amazing. I mean, that would really take them to the next height. They're a charity, aren't they, that have managed a lot of food supplies, particularly over COVID as well. So that's amazing. Congratulations.
I was going to say as well that what we've seen is through these lessons being taught, through teachers using the materials, they've then started more of these sorts of conversations. So it's led the schools to reflect internally. So it might be around food and questioning food waste or where they source their food. It might be around waste and packaging more generally. But what we've also seen then is these sort of series of lessons as stimulus for them to start asking questions within their local community and within their own school.
It makes it very... You can't... it's impossible to teach that eco-curriculum with any integrity if you don't start doing something about your own institution. It's a very awkward place to be if you're expounding all this stuff and then you're wasting... we have solar panels going up on our roof as well, don't we? Which is a very inspiring project. A couple of parents over a 5-year period they've raised through crowdfunding £70,000. Wow. And right now the solar panels are going up on our roof. But yes, I think a lot of this, that has been a longer term project, but a lot of this is being driven by the fact that we now have this eco-curriculum. We have no choice, really.
Amazing. And absolutely, this is a crisis now, not for the future, as you say. Very important. I think you will recognise this. We will be hopeful around the crisis, but it is definitely, we're living it right now. Has anyone else got more questions?
Hi. As the other lady just said, thank you so much for all of you for being here and being really inspiring and hopeful. I'm also an educator and I work for a charity where we work with lots of schools in Devon, and my strand in that is anti-racism work. So I wondered, there was a kind of question to the young people, whether you'd learnt a lot about, you've mentioned the animals, like in the Arctic, the polar bears, but whether you'd also learnt about people in different countries who are already losing their lands, or whether you've learnt, and this is to the adults, Nick and Paul, about the kind of intersectional lens around the global south and the north and disparity, and whether that's in the curriculum there or not, because that's what we're starting to do in our charity.
Well, I think that kind of, they do sometimes teach it. It's not like a main topic, but it is definitely there. They talk about, they don't really mention which countries, but they kind of talk about how we're the main ones that cause the climate crisis, and the other people in other countries are the ones that are facing the main problems with it.
I think we saw there was like a percentage, and I think it was like 30% people like in the whole country had like a toilet, like had a working toilet, and like even less had running water.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because of the climate, yeah.
We have, this is an evolving curriculum, and the eco side of it is one aspect driving the curriculum. There's three others, key ones. One is locality, one is appreciating beauty and nature. The other one, which is the key one that you're referring to really there, is appreciating difference. So we do this on many levels, and whether that's appreciating children who are neurodiverse, or appreciating people in other countries, it's a thread that we're developing throughout that curriculum. So I think they've encountered appreciating difference a lot. I think in the Sustainable Fashion project, it was very much there. Look at the impact on those people in those countries who are producing these clothes. But it's a broader topic for us, really, just at a very deep human level to appreciate our differences.
We over the last year we've been working with primary schools, and it's only in the last few months, sort of since January actually, we've been shifting towards Key Stage 3 and working with secondary schools. And you might disagree, but what we've found is with the Key Stage 3, there's more opportunity to explore those sorts of ideas on a philosophical level and to look at those in a deeper sense. What we've done with a lot of the primary curriculum is we kind of introduce those, but we don't explore them in that much depth. So things like carbon equity and climate justice are there, but they're not there as really distinct strands. That we're bringing that on board more at the Key Stage 3 elements.
Thank you for explaining that so well. I would like to ask the students that, having had your fashion show and explored clothing, have you discussed how this might impact the school uniform?
Well, at one point we were going to have house captain jumpers, which never actually happened. But throughout that entire time, I kept telling Mr. Moss, what's it going to be made out of? Is it going to be made out of cotton or polyester? We should do cotton. And he's like, but that uses up loads of water. And I was like, then we need to use recycled polyester or recycled cotton. And he's like, I don't know if we can do that. And I was like, you can.
You can. Love that. Is the uniform changing? Do you have to change everyone's uniform? Because uniforms all come from virtually one place, don't they? How does that work? Can we influence it that far back?
I haven't got to that yet, despite Robin's prodding.
She should stay at your school.
Constantly getting prodded, I am. I have no peace. It is something we have talked about, and that's as far as we've got. It is obviously a big outlay. It's an awful lot of material and clothing going into that. I think that there are lots of reasons for a uniform, it being uniform and fair for everybody. So it takes a deeper discussion, I think, to get that absolutely right.
Yeah, very good though. Jacob?
I think we did do a test at one point. So some of the grown-ups took home ones made out of bamboo, I think it was.
Yeah.
Actually. And then they washed them over 10 days, and the ones that we have now that aren't as good for the environment were fine, but the ones that were made out of bamboo had completely shriveled, the colour had pretty much vanished, and they'd shrunken, so you couldn't really
They've
wear
got to
them.
last, haven't they? Yeah.
I think that's probably because seeing as people don't really care about the environment when it comes to making clothes and stuff, is that if they cared a bit more, then those things wouldn't happen, because obviously if you care, then you try and find new ways to do things. But because only a few businesses can do that, and they don't have all the resources in the world, it doesn't always work, because obviously they're the first of their kind.
I think also what's highlighted is there's a lot of inertia in schools with the status quo of this is how we feed our children, this is how they travel to school, this is how the uniform they wear. And there's so much potential for collective action where a whole school, all the students call for change. And I think collectively that's how we can shift these sorts of things. With uniform, it's interesting. There's not much questioning of the materials and where they come from. And often that's because there's this assumption that we need to keep the cost as low as possible. But even still, there are many supermarkets who provide sort of organic cotton, and there are possibilities for that. What we are seeing more and more of is schools who are opening up second-hand uniform shops more and more. That really is quite common in a lot of schools, is making sure that uniform is handed down and that it's available to other pupils.
We do have a long way to go, though. I mean, I walked out of the school at the last day of term and looked up admiringly at my used solar panels, and then looked down, and there were 4 boxes of lost property not reclaimed. So we are living in ever more wasteful times. We consume, and we lose something and go and buy a new one. I never used to do that as a kid, and I think, there are still a lot of lessons to be learned. In some ways, we go back at the same time as going forward. So just need to be mindful all the time.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Mr. Waterman, and that's partly why the hat.
Nice.
My question is, I'm one of the 40% of teachers who leave within 10 years of starting their vocation. And then for me, it was a calling to inspire young minds to make a difference for future generations. I taught secondary school design and technology. My specialism was in sustainable design. I found the school so restrictive that I couldn't teach children what they needed to, the skills that I felt they needed to deal with what is coming. My question is to the children, what subject areas do you think you don't need to learn anymore? Perhaps they're a waste of your time. And what would you like to learn more of? And to the teachers, how can you adjust teaching? What would you suggest we do to adjust teaching to make it actually a job that human teachers can do?
Brilliant question. Did you hear that question?
I think we could probably let go of basic geography, like learning about France and the fact that France exists and they're famous for bakeries. It's quite pointless. I think we could learn a bit more about like sustainable options, because they obviously say things like you can buy sustainable clothes, but the thing is, what if you don't have enough money to buy sustainable clothes? How do you make it so that you aren't you have enough money to have good clothes, but you also aren't hurting the environment? Or things like you should use less plastic, but what are the alternatives? Because when you look in the supermarket, there's no foods with cardboard boxes instead of plastic ones. It's all just plastic, and there's not really any other options that seem to be there.
You could also learn more about different ways to travel, because lots of the fumes from cars and things, that's causing a lot of the pollution. But at our school we do like bikeability, so we know how to like bike to school if we're close enough. So we could probably learn more about like different ways to travel to different places.
Nice.
And if like your home is too far, I think we should like progress with electric cars, because they do seem to be like cutting down the fuel, because they're just using electricity. So I think we need to like make them, trying to find a way for them to take less time to charge and to go a bit faster. And
That's really interesting, and that becomes, what lesson does that mean? You need a lesson, maybe. Would you drop anything? Anything else you'd drop? Don't dare say. Any lesson that you think?
Grammar.
yeah.
It's important to know. Paul.
Well, so what's been interesting is, I've a similar sentiment in that sense of feeling a bit constrained in schools, this idea that they're often this exam factory, we need to get students these grades to go off and succeed in the future, and that being quite a short-sighted way to think about education, that actually there's far broader skills and understanding and knowledge and experiences and values and all these sorts of things that we need to inculcate and kind of develop with young people. And so what we've done, though, is we've said, look, actually schools do exist within a current framework, and in order to make this happen, we had to tie it to the national curriculum. But what we've done is we've said to teachers, it's possible to achieve the national curriculum through an environmental lens. You can do both. It's not an either-or. You don't need to say, actually, I haven't got time or space for this sustainability stuff. This is so fundamental to our very being that we can weave this into everything we do in every lesson, and this is what we're promoting. We're saying to teachers, you can do both. So we've mapped all of our schemes of work and all the lessons to the national curriculum so that allows teachers to be confident in what they're doing, but they're teaching that through this environmental lens. And I think actually from Nick and all his staff, and I guess from the young people as well, their experience of education is more holistic as well. It feels truer for them, and they feel happier in their roles as well. I think, Nick, you're really fortunate in the school that you've got is but your teachers, they've got so much confidence, autonomy, and it's been really good to work with them to help develop these schemes of work and these lessons, and it also means that they feel very invested in it.
It's about treating people as people, isn't it? Treating with respect. I mean, if I'm going to come back at you on that one, I think what I would do is just take the politicians' fingers out of the pie. I think maybe 40 years ago the biggest problem for education was it maybe wasn't regulated enough. There was some amazing stuff going on. I'd say the biggest problem there is the politicians have dived in and got deeper and deeper. And I mentioned that grammar thing. I'm going to just call it grammar thing. That was Michael Gove's little idea. How can a politician impose something on schools for up to 10 years? Which, I mean, you can argue its case, but really it's just been a blinking waste of time. And it's coming to its end now. And you just take the politicians away. They've done it in Scotland, I think, so they say. They've put it in the hands of educationalists, which is safer hands than the hands of politicians. And do you know what? It's not party. It doesn't matter if it's the Tories or Labour. They've all got their fingers too deep in, and they don't really know what they're doing. So, yeah, I think it's highly pressurised these days, and I think it's having a detrimental impact on our children's mental health. And I point the finger firstly at the politicians, say back off, really. Yeah.
Brilliant. Lovely.
They haven't been to state education themselves.
Yeah, exactly. We have time for one more question. Anyone got one final question? Thank you. And that gentleman at the back, where have we got? Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
I just wonder, you wonderful eco-warriors, how do you deal with climate change deniers within your school, within the other students? And I say, how do you deal with it peacefully, please?
I don't think there are many people in our school because of the teachers teaching us it. I think everybody pretty much is on our side, but if they weren't, then you just show them what's actually happening and they'll just stop, because they'll believe that actually if they can see the ice caps melting between literally seeing them with their own eyes, then they'll want to help. Because
I don't think we have any climate change deniers in our school, but the thing is they obviously still exist, and being a child in the 21st century, I obviously go on the internet a lot and see lots of people saying strange things like it doesn't exist and stuff. And I feel like if I ever met them in real life, what I'd probably do is I'd explain the situation to them, and then I'd ask them why they don't want to believe it, because I think people like that, I think they might just be a bit worried that it's real, and they just kind of want to deny that so they don't have to worry about it that much.
Very nice. Very nice.
I don't know if any of you have come across something called Philosophy for Children. It's a wonderful thing to get involved in. It culminates with children sitting in a circle and putting forward points of view, but without attaching their egos to it. It's quite unlike a staff meeting, which can get in a bit of a scrum. It's incredibly mature discussion where they put a hand forward like an offering, rather than a hand up. They just put a hand forward like that as an offering of a point of view, of a thought. And they put it into the middle of the space. It gets thrown around and mucked about with, and no one takes offence. It's a very grown-up way, more grown-up than most grown-ups, of discussing something and appreciating each other's points of view. It's rather a wonderful thing to watch. I advise you to go online and have a look.
Thank you. Brilliant. Well, we've come to the end of our discussions, but before we finish, I'd quite like to ask everyone just to give your feedback on today and how you feel as a result of being here, talking to everyone in the audience. Do you have any messages you want to give people before they leave? What's your sense of feeling? You start, Jacob. I can see that you're thinking.
I would say a message is, like, don't just go out thinking, oh, it won't matter if I, like, don't pick up this plastic on the floor. It's just one person. It's just one piece of plastic. Because it isn't. Because if everybody does that, because you're not the only one doing that, because, it will just spread and spread, and it will keep spreading. And the one other thing I would say is I wouldn't just get clothes, wear them once, throw them away. I would say go to a charity shop, get one from there, because then you're using something again, and when you grow out of it, either give it to a younger sibling or give it back to a different charity shop, which then somebody will use it again.
Very good. Well done.
Well,
Elizabeth.
there's a saying called, like, there is no planet B. And so basically just, like, don't destroy the planet we're on, because there's nowhere else to go. There's no other option.
Mm-hmm.
So we just have to kind of, like, keep on reusing the plastic and recycling it, because we can't, like, fix the stuff that we've done unless we, like, do it now, really.
Brilliant. So it's urgent. Yes. Robin.
What I would say is make one change, because if you think, oh, I can't make a big change, like I can't get plastic entirely out of my house, then maybe just think, well, oh, I see that there's one packet of avocados in a paper bag instead of a plastic one. I'll buy those ones instead. Or think, oh, I won't have a bath today, I'll have a shower just to save some water, or something like that. Because even if it's not a big change, it still makes a difference.
Wonderful. Love that. Love that. I'm coming to you, Paul, at the end, but Nick, is there anything you want to give to the audience now about what can we all do to make a difference from an education perspective?
I'll just talk from a school's point of view. You'll all be connected schools in some kind of way. I'm not going to suggest you go and put pressure on them. But the biggest enemy for teachers is time and energy. There's an awful lot on their plate, even more so in the last few months. But please do everything you can to encourage your schools to get on board with this. It is a climate crisis, as that lady said over there. It is here, it's now. We haven't got time to faff about. We've just got to get on with it. And it couldn't be anything more important. So do everything you can to encourage your schools to get on board. It doesn't have to be with Ministry of Eco-Education. I'd strongly urge them to do so. It could be any way forward, but please encourage them. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well done. And Paul, where do we go next?
Yeah, I was going to reiterate what Nick was saying there. We've got a call to action. All of us exist within a community. There are schools near you. You might have children that go to a school. You might be a grandparent of people. So please do pass on the message. We're keen for as many schools to get on board as quickly as possible. So we were saying we've got more than 100 already engaged, but there are more than 20,000 schools. This is a small number. We need to scale this as quick as possible. So we have a website, the Ministry of Eco-Education. You can just Google that. Or we have sign-up lists. You can give us your email address, and then we would be more than happy to share more detailed information that you can pass on to anyone who you think might be interested.
Brilliant. Thank you. So we've come to the end of our session. Just before I say and we give our appreciation for this incredible audience, our performers on stage, so our speakers, I just want to let you know there is a forest walk that's taking place very soon that Simon Pickering, our principal ecologist from Ecotricity here on the the left here, is going to take anyone who would like, and perhaps you guys would like to go on a bit of a tour around the Arboretum to see what's really going on here. But I just want to say thank you. I think we all are probably very in awe of Elizabeth, Jacob, and also Robin, because it's not easy to come on stage for a start, but what they're actually saying, what you've said today is just incredible. I think you'd get signed up to work for Ecotricity tomorrow if you're old enough, really got the right sort of attitude. We have hope. We do all have hope. We will do this together, but we won't do it without you, because you are certainly completely on the right trajectory to where we need to be. So thank you very much. Thank you to Nick. Thank you to Robin. Thank you to Elizabeth, Jacob and Paul. If everyone could give them a big round of applause, that would be amazing. Well done. Thank you.